All right, welcome everyone to this deep dive into mastering English.
Nice.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're really trying to get this fluency thing down.
Yeah.
And you even sent us a little podcast episode on it, so that's really cool.
Absolutely dedication.
Yeah, total dedication. So consider this like your cheat sheet to fluency.
Okay.
We're going to like pull out the good stuff from all the research that you gave us, break it down.
Awesome.
And hopefully have some fun along the way, you know?
Sounds good.
It's kind of funny, though, analyzing a podcast episode about learning English
Right.
on our podcast.
Exactly.
Yeah, but hey, why not?
That's meta.
So one of the first things I think we should hit on is like,
Yeah.
why are you doing this in the first place?
It's so important.
Yeah, the why.
Like understanding your motivation.
You know, I struggled with that for a while when I was trying to learn Spanish.
Okay.
I thought it'd be cool to speak another language,
Yeah.
but I didn't have a strong enough reason to get me through like the hard parts. It wasn't until I booked a trip to South America that it really clicked for me.
Wow.
And actually the podcast episode that you sent in,
Yes.
it mentions this too. They say, you know, career aspirations, travel plans, or even just connecting with people from different cultures.
Those are really good reasons to learn.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how those different motivations, really impact how you approach the learning process.
That's true.
Imagine someone like gearing up for a business negotiation in English
Okay.
versus just wanting to chat with locals while they're traveling.
Right.
The vocabulary they need, the level of formality, even the skills they focus on, it all shifts based on that why.
So somebody studying for a business meeting,
Yeah.
they might be spending hours
Yeah.
just, reading industry jargon, that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And someone else might be like, how do I order a coffee
Yeah.
and ask for directions?
Exactly.
It's like tailoring a fitness plan.
I like that analogy.
Right. You wouldn't train for a marathon the same way you train for weightlifting.
That's good. And that brings us to another really important point. That was highlighted in the episode you shared.
Okay.
Building a routine.
Okay.
They recommend like 15 to 30 minutes each day to practice.
Finding that time can be tough,
Oh, for sure.
but the key is to make it sustainable.
Yeah.
Like any new habit.
Absolutely.
I gotta admit, sometimes even 15 minutes feels like running a marathon
Right.
with my schedule. But the podcast mentions like weaving English into your existing routine.
Yeah.
So instead of thinking of it as like this separate, daunting task,
Okay.
you just find these little pockets in your day.
Yeah,
I mean, you're listening to us talk about English right now.
exactly.
That's practice.
You're already doing it.
Right.
It's those small, consistent efforts. They really make a difference.
I like that.
And they use this great analogy. It's like training for a marathon, not a sprint.
Okay.
You can't cram for fluency overnight.
No.
But each day that you're showing up, you're building that endurance,
Yeah.
you're making progress.
You know what? That is actually a comforting thought.
I think so too.
Takes the pressure off.
Absolutely.
And that reminds me of another thing that they mentioned.
What's that?
Choosing like a long-term goal.
Okay.
Something that really excites you. Like maybe reading your favorite author in the original English.
Oh, nice.
Or finally understanding that British show everybody's talking about. Having that like enjoyable target in sight,
Yeah.
I think can really make that daily grind a lot more fun.
Absolutely. Keeps you going, keeps that motivation up.
Yeah, it keeps it grounded in a sense of like, purpose and accomplishment.
Totally. Now, we've been talking a lot of theory here.
Yeah.
But let's not forget about the practical side of things.
Right.
At some point, you're going to have to actually speak the language.
Yeah, you can't be a silent observer forever.
Right.
You got to jump in.
Yes, you do.
Speaking of jumping in, the podcast had this tip.
Okay.
I thought it was both hilarious and surprisingly effective.
What is it?
Talk to yourself.
Oh.
I know it sounds a little weird, but think about it. You can practice your pronunciation, try out new phrases. Basically, you have a judgment-free conversation partner
I love it.
24/7.
That's fantastic.
All
It's a
right.
great way to build that confidence.
Yeah.
Without the pressure of an audience.
Yeah. And eventually you will want to interact with other humans.
Right, of course.
And the podcast mentions things like language exchange apps
Yes.
and conversation clubs.
Oh, those can be so fun.
Those are gold mines. I remember when I first started using a language exchange app, I was so nervous.
Oh, yeah.
I could barely string a sentence together.
I bet.
But you know what? Everyone there was in the same boat. And we all ended up laughing at our mistakes and helping each other out.
That's great.
It's those real life interactions, even the awkward ones,
Yeah.
that really make a difference.
And it's amazing how practicing speaking helps with your listening as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when you're producing the sounds. Forming sentences, it helps you recognize them
Oh.
when you hear them.
So it's like a 2-for-1 deal.
Absolutely.
You get the speaking and the listening.
Sign me up.
Right. And while we're on the topic of listening,
Yeah.
the podcast also talks about accents.
Yes, familiarizing yourself with different accents.
It's crucial.
So important, and there's actually a really cool neurological reason for this.
Okay?
When you're exposed to different accents, your brain is like decoding different pronunciations, rhythms, intonations, and it strengthens your overall auditory processing.
So it's not just about understanding someone with a really thick accent,
Right.
like giving your brain a workout.
Exactly.
Maybe our listener could pick a podcast
Oh, yeah.
or a show with an accent they find really challenging.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
It turns it into a fun challenge.
Yeah, and the benefits go way beyond just understanding that one accent.
Absolutely. Now let's switch gears a bit and talk about reading.
Okay.
Another really important skill.
Yeah, let's dive into the world of books, articles, all that good stuff.
One of the most important things to remember is to start with material that's right for your level.
Yeah.
There's no shame in starting with simplified texts, even children's books.
Yeah, build that confidence.
Exactly.
Don't feel overwhelmed.
You got it.
I remember when I was learning Spanish, I tried to jump into Don Quixote way too soon.
Oh, no.
It did not end well.
Oh.
But the podcast does mention a really cool resource.
Yeah?
Graded readers.
Oh, yeah.
These are books that adapt classic stories or popular genres to different levels of English.
I love that.
So you can find something that you're interested in without getting bogged down with really complicated language.
Brilliant way to stay engaged.
Yeah. And speaking of engaging activities, they also suggest daily journaling
Oh, yeah.
as a low-pressure way to practice writing. Wait, are you suggesting I pour my heart out into a diary in a language I'm still learning?
Well,
That sounds a little intimidating.
not at all. It's not about perfect prose. It's about just, flexing those writing muscles in a safe space. Even just a few sentences about your day, your thoughts, your goals.
You know what? I actually did something similar when I was learning Spanish.
Really?
I started writing these little poems and song lyrics,
Oh, wow.
even though they're probably terrible.
Yeah.
But it was so liberating
I do.
to just express myself creatively
It's amazing.
in another language.
What's fascinating about journaling in another language is that it unlocks these new pathways in your thinking.
Okay,
You're forced to find different ways to articulate your ideas.
that's true.
And it can be really insightful.
So you're stepping outside your comfort zone
Yeah,
and discovering a whole new side of yourself.
absolutely.
And who knows, maybe you'll unearth some hidden talent for writing in English.
Maybe.
Right.
And even if you don't become the next Shakespeare, that consistent writing practice, no matter how small, it's really essential for developing fluency.
It's all about building those connections
Yeah,
and making the language a part of your everyday life.
absolutely. All right, so we've covered a lot of ground already. We talked about motivation routines.
Speaking, listening, reading, journaling.
Wow.
It's amazing how much goes into mastering a language.
It is.
But what happens when we hit those roadblocks?
It's
You know those moments where it feels like you're stuck?
the dreaded plateau.
Yeah, and you're not making any progress?
We all encounter them at some point. But the good news is the source material you shared has some great strategies for overcoming those hurdles
Okay.
and reigniting your passion for English.
I like it.
So we were talking about those frustrating plateaus. It's
Wow.
like hitting a wall in your workout.
Yeah, you're putting in the effort, but the results aren't there.
Exactly.
It can be so demotivating.
Yeah.
But the podcast you shared has some good advice for breaking through.
Okay, I'm listening.
One suggestion is to diversify your learning methods.
That's a good idea, like shake things up a bit.
Yeah, so if you've been relying on apps, maybe try some real-life conversations.
Okay.
Or if you're stuck in a textbook rut,
Yeah.
explore a new genre of literature. Or dive into podcasts, audiobooks.
It's all about keeping things fresh and exciting.
Right, you got to prevent that boredom from creeping in.
Absolutely. And they also had some good advice for grammar,
Okay,
which can be a real obstacle.
it can be.
They say instead of memorizing endless rules, focus on understanding the concepts.
That makes a lot more sense.
Right.
I remember when I was learning Spanish, I was so overwhelmed by all the rules.
Yeah.
But once I started to see the logic, it was like a light bulb went off.
I love that.
Yeah, instead of blindly following instructions, I actually understood why things were structured the way they were.
It's like solving a puzzle.
Yeah,
And the language starts to make sense.
and that sense of discovery can be really motivating.
Oh, absolutely. And speaking of motivation,
Yeah,
the podcast also talks about celebrating the small wins.
that's so important.
We get so caught up in the big goal of fluency.
Right.
We forget about the progress we're making every day.
It reminds me of a story from the podcast.
Okay.
A listener was feeling discouraged, not seeing the results they wanted. Then they realized they could understand their favorite English song without the lyrics.
Wow.
That little victory totally changed their perspective.
It's amazing how those small things can have a big impact.
Yeah, progress isn't always linear.
Yeah.
There are going to be ups and downs.
Sure.
But every step is worth celebrating.
And it's those moments of joy that make the whole journey worth it.
So we've found our motivation. We've got a routine. We're celebrating our wins, but then life happens.
Oh, yeah.
Work deadlines, family commitments. Suddenly that 30 minutes of practice feels impossible.
The eternal struggle.
Right.
But the podcast has some great advice for that, too.
Okay, lay it on me. I need all the time-saving tips I can get.
One of their suggestions is to integrate English learning into your existing routine.
Okay, so like multitasking.
Kinda, yeah. So listen to podcasts or audiobooks while you're commuting or exercising.
I love that. Even doing chores.
It's like sneaking in a workout.
Exactly.
Without even realizing it.
And you can make small changes to your environment, too.
Like what? Switch your phone or computer settings to English.
Oh, well,
Watch English news while you cook dinner.
you know, I used to do that when I was learning Spanish.
Really?
I'd put on Spanish music in the background while I was working.
I love that.
It's amazing how much you absorb without even trying.
It's all about creating that immersive experience.
Yeah, and the podcast also talks about those little pockets of downtime,
Yes.
like waiting in line or riding the bus.
Use those moments for quick vocabulary review or listening practice.
Those minutes add up.
And they do.
And it's way less daunting than feeling like you need to block out hours.
It's about making it a habit, not a chore.
And speaking of making it work for you,
Yes.
the podcast talks about choosing resources that align with your learning style.
It's so important.
Because what works for one person might not work for another.
Absolutely. Some people thrive in a classroom setting.
Right.
Others prefer a more self-directed approach.
And thankfully, there are so many resources out there.
There are the podcast highlights, language learning apps.
Yeah. Like Duolingo and Rosetta Stone.
Yeah, those are great for building a foundation.
Especially for beginners.
And then as you progress, you can explore other options,
Yeah.
like immersive platforms, YouTube channels, podcasts, even book recommendations.
The key is to experiment and find what works for you.
Exactly.
And don't be afraid to try a bunch of different methods.
You might find that a combination works best.
And the podcast also suggests maybe hiring a tutor or taking an online course.
Yeah, for more personalized guidance.
That can be really helpful if you're struggling with something specific.
Take care.
But even with all these amazing resources, the most important factor is,
Our own effort,
yes, our commitment and effort,
taking ownership of our learning journey.
and embracing the challenges and the rewards.
Because fluency isn't a destination.
It's a journey.
It is, there will be moments of frustration.
Yeah.
Moments of doubt. But also incredible joy and satisfaction.
So we've covered a lot of practical strategies and motivational tips.
We have.
But there's one final crucial element the podcast highlights.
And that is,
Having fun.
oh, I like that.
Learning a language shouldn't feel like a chore.
It shouldn't.
It should be an enjoyable experience.
Mhm.
You know, it's funny, we always think about learning as this like serious thing.
Right.
But honestly, when we're having fun,
Yeah,
we learn so much faster.
totally.
And the episode you shared really gets this. They talk about finding that balance between learning and enjoyment.
Okay.
One of their suggestions was to like think about what you already love about English.
Okay, so like what aspects of English do you already find interesting?
Yeah, whether it's music, movies, humor, even certain cultural topics,
Okay.
and just get more of that in your life.
I like that.
So if you're a music lover,
Yeah.
you could totally immerse yourself in English music.
Mhm.
Pay attention to the lyrics, look up new words,
Yeah.
maybe even try singing along.
Right.
You'd be surprised how quickly you pick things up.
Absolutely.
And it's way more fun than just like studying vocab lists.
So much more engaging.
Right. If you're a film buff,
Yeah.
watch more English movies and shows.
Okay.
Start with subtitles if you need to, but try to rely on them less and less.
I like that challenge.
Yeah, you'll start to get the rhythm of spoken English.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe even discover some new favorite actors or directors.
That's a great point.
It's all about connecting your passions with your language learning.
I love that analogy. Building a bridge.
Right. The more you can do that, the more motivated you'll be.
Absolutely.
And less it feels like a chore.
Exactly. Learning should be fun.
It should be an adventure.
Yes.
So, okay, we've talked about a lot.
Yeah.
Understanding your motivation, routine learning styles,
Small wins.
incorporating English into your life.
Having fun.
It seems like fluency is this mix of hard work planning and enjoyment.
Well said, it's a journey.
Yeah.
And as we wrap this up, I just want to remind you there's no one right way to learn a language.
That's true.
So experiment, find what works for you.
And don't be afraid to adjust your strategy as you go.
It's your journey.
You get to choose the path.
Exactly. And as you continue on this path to mastering English, keep in mind what you want to achieve with this fluency.
Like, what are your dreams?
Yeah, do you want to travel the world? Connect with people from different cultures?
Advance your career?
Read a book in its original language?
Whatever it is, let it be your guide.
Visualize it.
Let it fuel your passion.
You got this.
And remember, you're not alone.
There's a whole community of language learners out there.
Yeah, we're all in this together.
So we'd love to hear about your progress.
Yeah, any challenges you're facing.
Your favorite discoveries along the way.
Reach out to us anytime.
Happy learning.
We can't wait to see what you accomplish.
Until next time.